Ronnie, do you want to start off by introducing yourself, especially the people that haven't been here yet? But just give
Yeah,
yourself.
absolutely. No, I'm happy to be here. I think it's been a lot of fun listening to Andy and Adam and learning from them. And I've been fortunate to be coaching for a long time, all the way from select ball from the young kids to high school into pro ball into the big league. So was real fortunate to be around a lot of good coaches and a lot of good mentors. And I think one of the funnest things was just all the different types of kids that I've been able to deal with over the years, and all the learning styles and different cultures that they came from. So, I say I've been a teacher, but I've been taught a lot in my experience, and it's been fun. And I love to learn. And I think this is going to be a good program for you guys. And, lastly, I've been fortunate enough to have time to write a book. So I'm proud of the feat that I accomplished. And so anyways, happy to be here.
Yeah, and Ronnie, a little background. My relationship with Ronnie, met him back in 2007. He was the hitting coordinator for the Cincinnati Reds. And guys, back in 2007, it was a really pivotal year of my career. I just had a rough 2006, coming into 2007, hoping to have like a good mentor and good backbone. And Ronnie was such a huge help in getting me back on track with my hitting. So big kudos to Ronnie for that. Just Andy, you want to introduce yourself as well? You gotta unmute yourself.
There we go. So anyways, my name's Andy. My last name's Pierce. I am a performance expert and a master resilience trainer for the United States Army. And I spend most of my time training special forces and U.S. Rangers. So I train them how to use their brains most effectively so that they can, go and perform their jobs as best that they can. And I also have a master's degree in performance and sports psychology. So I am excited to be here and looking forward to our discussions today.
And a little background. Thank you, Andy. It's awesome to have you, man. Just a little background on myself. Fortunate enough to play 11 years in the major leagues, 14 years in professional baseball, and just the mentors that I had. You can't do it on your own. A lot of support, like I said about Ronnie, a lot of great coaches and a lot of great teammates that I learned from. And I'm also always proud to say that I'm a graduate of Western Michigan University. With that said, what should we expect for tonight? It's actually a really good presentation. Andy and Ronnie and I have been talking a lot about this, but we're going to talk about why we visualize, how we visualize, and what to visualize. So Andy, let's start off. Do you mind just going over this definition of visualization?
Yeah, so here's just a really nice, crisp definition of what visualization is. And it's using the senses to create or recreate an experience in your mind. Now, the key component I think that we should pay attention to here is using your senses, right? So instead of just saying your visual sense, we want to use our visual sense along with what we're going to hear, what we're going to smell, what we're going to taste in some situations. And so we want to incorporate all of our senses into recreating the experience so that it becomes real life in our brain. And that's when visualization that's when we see the benefit. And so moving on, why do players not visualize, or why don't players visualize? There's a number of different reasons. So one, they might not understand the concept, right? Or they might not have time. They might not be that good at it. Or maybe they've tried it, but they didn't really have many results. So you got young players that are like, oh yeah, coach told me to visualize. I don't really know what he's talking about, how to do it. And then I try my best and it didn't help me get a hit that inning or that game. Or I didn't bat as well as I wanted to. So there's a number of different reasons why people don't visualize. So I know, Ronnie, you work with a lot of young players. What's your experience with this?
I think the biggest thing is kids aren't exposed to it as much. And, because they're not exposed, like you said, they maybe don't have a really good understanding of how to do it. And I think the biggest thing, the guys that really do it and do it well, they empower it and they believe in it and, they trust it. But I think that's the hardest thing is getting kids to understand. And it takes some discipline, we don't realize how much time we actually do have to do this. We've got some downtime as players, but those are the perfect times to do it, which is what we're going to cover today. But I think that's the biggest thing, just not being exposed to it or not being taught how to do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Ronnie. So let's talk a little bit about why we want to visualize. So this whole presentation, we're going to be talking about the why behind visualization. And we're going to get into some of the science behind it. And we're going to talk story about some of the different people that also visualize. And so first, I want to talk about the Blue Angels. So there's arguably some of the best pilots in the world. What they do, if you guys don't know who they are Navy pilots, and they fly in formation, meaning that they put their airplanes or their jets within inches from each other. And so one bad move or one wrong move could result in some serious problems, and potentially it could kill them. And so visualization is a huge part of their pre-game process. And so I'm going to play a video. Adam's going to press play in just a minute that plays it's a video that talks about what they do and how they visualize. So while this video is playing, I want you to think to yourself, why do the Blue Angels use visualization before each flight? Okay, so think to yourself, why do they use visualization before each flight?
Thumper's low transition, high performance climb to the split S. And while I'm saying those things, those are what they're going to hear on the radio. Some of the guys will close their eyes and they'll visualize what they're, and some will move their hands a little bit. They'll visualize what they're going to be seeing out there while that's occurring. It's like going out and warming up before if you're a pitcher, warming up your arm a little bit, but they warm up their minds.
Everybody is very attuned to the boss and what he's saying, and he makes those calls in the brief just like he'd make them in the flight.
Now, burners ready now. Power is set. Gear. A little drive. There we go. A little more pull. A little more pull. Adding power. Easing the pull. Easing power. Easing more power. Step by the bars.
I've flown the air show before I ever go out there. I fly it in my mind. I know what my 3-mile checkpoint is. I know what my 2-mile checkpoint is. I know where I expect to see Thumper. I know what the next maneuver is, and I actually move my wrist and can fly the show. It's good concentration. It's what you need because you get focused. Then you go out there and you just have to do it.
All right. So we see there's a number of different reasons why that they use visualization, and it's really a huge factor in their success. So it helps them practice with less consequences, right? So as they're actually going to fly, as they visualize, they have no consequence, right? Because they're sitting in a chair, but they're able to practice before even actual flying. So it puts their mind to ease, right? So before their performance, it also lowers nervousness and anxiety, and it helps them prepare to fly at their best with consistency. And that right there is the key to visualization. That's one of the biggest benefits you're going to have. Again, I'll say it again. It helps you prepare to fly or play at their best with consistency. Now, this 100% applies to baseball. You're going to have the same benefits that these guys have. You're going to play with more consistency. You're going to play at your highest level. At least it is a tool to help you get to your highest level, which is fascinating, right? And so when I work with the Army, it's the same thing, right? That's why visualization is so important, is because it helps them when they're in combat situations. They visualize what the combat situation would be like, so it's not nearly as much of a surprise. And so they can then perform at their best with consistency. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about how visualization works with your thoughts. Now, this section right here, I think, is absolutely fascinating. So I had a professor in college. His name was Dr. Kinghorn. He was a neuro and biopsychologist. So this guy had 2 PhDs. He was very bright. And in fact, so he was actually one of the lead psychologists that went over to New York City right after 9/11. So this guy had some experience under his belt. He also worked with neurosurgeons. So this is something I didn't really understand, was that when people undergo brain surgery, they had a neuropsychologist there will be talking to the patient while the neurosurgeon performs the surgery. So they actually keep them awake, which I didn't realize that until he had told me. This was about maybe 12 years ago now. And so when they keep them awake, what they would do is the neurosurgeon and the neuropsychologist would get permission from the patient and ask if they could map out their brain. And the way they did this was the neurosurgeon would send a little electronic shock to the person's brain or in different areas of his brain. And they would find what parts of the brain would get shocked and then what the body would do. So in other words, they actually controlled the body parts of the patients with the electronic impulse by touching it on the brain. So I thought this was crazy, right? So Dr. Kinghorn, I remember he told me that he got so good at mapping out the brain that he would say to the neurosurgeon, hey, right hand, index finger, make it move. And sure enough, the surgeon would shock a very specific part of the brain and the right hand index finger would move. Now they got so good at it that he would say, all right, let's see what you got. And he would say, left foot, big toe. Sure enough, because they had mapped it out, they'd put an electronic shock into that area of the brain that controlled the left foot, big toe, and sure enough, it would move. And so this, when I say, like, the title of this slide, that your thoughts are electric, I mean that your thoughts are literally electric, because that's how your brain works. And now the interesting part, or the reason we're even talking about this, is because it 100% relates to baseball. So how do you throw a baseball? Your brain sends an electronic impulse through your nervous system into your body, and you throw the ball. Now that's fascinating, right? So now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the brain-muscle relationship. Now I think this is another research study that I think is fascinating. So researchers hooked up electrodes to the body of this Olympic downhill skier. So what they did is they asked him to sit comfortably in his chair and imagine himself going down a familiar ski slope. And so what they found was the electrodes monitored any electrical activity in the skier as he imagined himself going down this hill. So the pattern of the activity in the skier's body actually mirrored the terrain of the ski run. So what we found was, when visualizing a performance, the neural pathways between the brain and the muscles are activated. Now think about that for a second. He's just sitting there in a chair, and these electrodes are saying, oh, these muscles, as you visualize doing them, are starting to fire. So what we found is that through visualizing, you're actually building neural pathways, which essentially translates in, by visualizing playing the game, you can actually get better at playing the game. which is crazy, right? Like, how does that happen? But it does. And that's what research has found. And the interesting part is that your brain can't even tell the difference. So when you have physical practice and you have visualization, if you were to put electrodes on your brain while doing both, they would look the same. Obviously, when you're visualizing, your muscles aren't firing as much and it's not as strong of, your muscles aren't actually engaging nearly as much. But what's important here is you're creating the neural pathways that help you with that skill. That's why it works, because you might not be building as much muscle, but you're building the neural pathways. And that's where you get the benefit. And that's where we really see that visualization really works. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about muscle memory and the biology behind visualization. So we're going to get a little bit deeper, and we're going to get a little sciencey in here, but stay with me. I promise if you don't know this stuff, it's really fascinating. So while visualizing, messing up my words. Okay. So while visualizing, you expand your network of neurons. Now, neurons are cells that make up your nerves, and your nerves control your muscles by sending signals to act or to move, right? So if you can see me on the screen, if I lift up my arm, as I'm lifting it up, what's happening is my brain is sending the electronical impulse through my nervous system into my muscles to move. So the faster or stronger your nerves pass the signal, the more agile your muscles will be. And that's why it's not the biggest, strongest people that are really good at baseball. It's those who have the fastest and strongest nerves. So I'm sure many of you, being playing the game for a long time or even a short amount of time, it's not the big muscly guy that's really good at baseball. And so this explains why. It's the person who has the strongest and fastest nerves that control the muscles. And so let's talk about how you build strong nerves. So you build fast and strong neural pathways by what research shows is visualization and practice. That's how you build fast, strong neural pathways. And the amazing part, like we just talked about, is that your brain cannot tell the difference between visualization and practice. So while visualizing actually builds these neural pathways, which again, to me, is wild that just thinking it becomes a physical reaction within your body. And so this is what we're talking about when we talk about muscle memory. In fact, me and Adam the other day had a pretty funny conversation when we started talking about visualization. He goes, Andy, like, you don't really believe that there's little brains inside your muscles, do you? I was like, no, of course not, right? Like there's not little brains inside your muscles, but this system of creating strong neural pathways is what makes it so that you can pass the signal, which makes it so that you can continue to do that task, even if you haven't done it for a long time. Now, it's in your hippocampus, or actually it's in your hippocampus the hippocampus is the part of the brain that creates the new neurons as you visualize your practice. So that's what we have a picture of the brain here right now. So Adam, I think you had a couple questions. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just wondering if these neural pathways, you're developing them so quickly. Does that help with developing fast twitch muscles, or is that something different?
Right. So that's a great question. So fast twitch muscles, or your muscles in general. So let me actually take a step back. So you have your nervous system, which tells your muscles what to do. Okay. So the key here is that, yes, your muscles and your nerves are very much connected. As you get stronger, your nerves are going to get stronger as well. But when I talk about your nerves in this whole presentation, I'm talking about just your nerves versus your muscles. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, it's the biggest thing that I see for these neural pathways that you're creating, it's you have to be able to control these pathways, right? Like, because
right,
it doesn't matter, like, as a hitter, if you're just going up there and swinging because you've trained yourself to swing, but what about stopping? You got to keep them under control. And I'm sure there's different ways you can relate that to different athletes as well, right?
Yes. So reaction time, and that kind of made me think of reaction time, right? So what stops you from swinging the bat, right? Yes, it takes muscle, especially as you're pulling, in and out. But what's sending the signal to stop? It's your nervous system. So your nerves are what are going to stop you or help you to stop. So they really all work together. And you actually brought up a really good point about how at least it made me think of this. So like, if you think of like, do any of you have those friends who seem to be really good at everything? It's like you take them bowling and they haven't bowled in like 15 years and they bowl like a 200. You're like, what the heck? Like, how did you do that? And they're like, I don't know. I'm just pretty good at bowling, I guess. So here's the thing is, as a baseball player, as you develop these neural pathways, it's going to help you in other sports, right? So think of it this way: as a little kid, like when you have a baby, their neural pathways are really weak, right? So it's kind of like a dirt road, like even a footpath of being able to pass this signal, right? So as you develop and get stronger and start playing and start really getting to learn how your body works, you start turning that into like a road that you drive a car down. And as you get better and better, those neural pathways look more like a highway. And then when you get really good at, like, say, baseball, it might end up looking like a 7-way highway where you're on it. And those neural pathways are super open because you put in all the time and effort. So yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, we were talking earlier, about like I think about like the bullet train. I talk a little bit later in the presentation, but like how it's like, I go back to control. I'm all about, you have to be able to control this still. And if it's off the track, it's useless, right? So you got to make sure that boom, it's going really fast in the right direction.
100%.
Cool.
I always think about it when I see guys that, get to pro ball, and they start facing guys throwing 95, 96. And I visualize that highway that you're saying, because the more you do it, the more you get acclimated to it. It's not as difficult a task as when you first started. So it just seems to me like that would be a great visual. As that pathway starts getting bigger, like a highway, it just becomes a lot easier for a hitter. Am I on point with that?
100%. 100% on point. So let's look at some more of the research. Unless, Adam, did you have anything?
No.
Okay. All right. So let's look at some of the research. Now, if you guys want to go ahead and take a look at this graph, on the left-hand side, you got performance, and that's high and low. And then on the bottom there, on the x-axis, you have types of performance. Okay. So that bottom line represents no practice, right? If you don't practice something, you're not going to get better. Okay. Now, here's the fascinating part is when research shows that when you do only mental practice, you're going to find a significant increase in your performance. In fact, there have been some research studies where mental practice, like you take two groups, you have one doing mental practice, one doing only physical practice. There have been some studies where those who only did mental practice actually improved more than those who only did physical practice. So those lines sometimes are interchanged. But as a whole, most research has shown that physical practice is typically going to make you better than just visualization. But here's the kicker, and here's the part that I think is just knowledge for any athlete, no matter what you're doing. And that is that when you combine physical and mental practice, you're going to be a better player. You're going to be, okay, there we go. You're gonna play whatever sport significantly better. And so that's what research shows, is that visualization with physical practice is the way to get better at your game. So Ronnie, I know you've worked with a lot of youth. I'd say a handful, but it's probably several handfuls. So have you experienced this?
I think the biggest thing for me, as I'm listening to you talk about this, it relates me back to when I was in high school. That's when I was, kind of exposed to visualization. My high school coach would force us to visualize on our trip to the games, and he would want us to all lay down and close our eyes on our trip and just visualize. And it was forced on us, but you had nothing else to do, so you start doing it, and then all of a sudden it started kind of resonating with all of us as a team, and we started playing better. And it was amazing to me how often or how close a situation would come that I had visualized on the bus, where I'd get a base hit up the middle, and that was what I was visualizing. So I think it was and the hard work and the physical, and then connected to the visualization. I think it's very powerful, and I'm just thankful that I learned it at a younger age, and I use it in every part of my life, whether I'm doing lessons and or even playing golf, whatever the case may be. And I think it's a very, very powerful way of doing it, and the benefits are just, it's awesome how much you can benefit from it.
Ronnie, so quick question for you as I'm thinking about it, but like going back to that high school story, you said your coach forced you to do it. Like there was no kind of educating you guys how to do it. So it's probably tough to buy into. You probably felt forced to do it. But imagine if you were educated, if you kind of said, hey, this is why we're doing it. You think that would have helped a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that we started doing, we would talk about it, and we'd say, hey, we're facing a right-hander tonight in our game. This guy throws fastball, curveball, change. So, why not? I'm going to visualize staying on that fastball, hitting it the other way, and I'm going to stay on a breaking ball, and, just seeing myself being successful against the different pitches. Even on the defensive side, seeing myself making a play to save a run. But yeah, if I would have been educated even more, I think it would have been even more powerful.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. In fact, I would argue that that's an edge that you might get on your competition, right? So guys that really practice visualization and take it seriously, that is an edge that might be the thing that helps you to overcome and potentially get a win. So let's talk more about some of the benefits to visualization, okay? This is what you get out of it. So it helps with confidence, right? Especially when you're dealing with visualizing something that you haven't done before, right? You're going against a pitcher that you're nervous about, right? Visualize yourself getting a hit off him, right? So it will create confidence. It helps with technique and skill development, right? So if you have a player who is struggling with technique, well, have him go sit in the corner for 2 minutes or 2 to 5 minutes and visualize himself figuring it out in his mind, and then have him come practice it. Sometimes for some players, that's the thing they need to do. It helps with injury or coming back from injury, right? So I know this can be really difficult for some players, right? When you get hurt doing something you've done a million times, you might have a little bit of fear as to doing that thing again, right? So visualize yourself overcoming the fear and overcoming the injury. It helps with concentration, and it helps with composure. Now, I'll tell you this right now. The Army spends a lot of money on people teaching them this concept. And you know why they do it? For this right here. This is benefit right here is the difference, at least in my line of work or working with soldiers, it is the difference between sometimes life or death. And so I work with a handful of soldiers, right? That the special forces soldiers, those guys are doing really difficult things. They're clearing rooms. They're still getting deployed. Like a lot of the Army isn't getting deployed because we're not really at war anymore. But these guys are still overseas, and they need to understand how their brain works. And visualization is a powerful technique to put them in the situation before they ever actually get in the situation. So this right here is what you get out of it. And it takes concentration and it takes practice. So I love visualization. In my opinion, I think you're just crazy not to implement visualization. There's so many benefits, and I loved it. You can tell I get excited about it.
Oh, that's solid, Andy. Like that why we visualize, so important, and breaking it down to how our brain actually works is just all that intelligence. It's unbelievable. But let's talk about how to visualize. And I'm going to give you guys kind of an example of what I did coming up from college to the professional level to the major leagues, how I visualized. So there's 4 key components of visualization. So first, I mentioned the bullet train before. That's your control, making sure you stay on the track. Yeah, you can build these neural pathways, but they got to be in control. It's got to be a vivid image that you're producing for yourself. You got to put yourself in the right perspective. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then you got to do it with time. I know Ricky he wrote in the chat box about you have to visualize the successful moment so your brain can actually like capture that, and that's so important. That's a great point, Ricky. I appreciate you adding that. But with those 4 components, I'll lead you guys into the how, right? So like before you think about time, you got to make sure that you have enough time to do it. So before practice, maybe take 10 or 15 minutes, or if you're at home, take 10 or 15 minutes. They recommend not more than 20 minutes. And I highly agree with that. You can do it before games. It's going to be a little bit quicker because you have your routine going on. So a little bit quicker, 5 to 10 minutes, and you'll feel really good. And you can do it on deck and then before a pitch. And I put the red line here because before a pitch, it's more of an internal perspective because it's really quick. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit. Let's talk about external perspective first. And this is what I did the majority of the time. I wasn't perfect because it takes a lot of work. It takes time to do this. It takes buying into it to do it. But whenever I did take the time to do it and I really concentrated on it, I was a lot better. I was more consistent, like Andy said. So let's start here. I would always start with this blimp view in my mind. I would imagine that I was down on the field and you could see how slow the game is and how quiet it is. So it's kind of neat to see the ball just float. That's where I started. And I would get closer. Now I can hear the crowd and I can hear the sounds. I can smell the smells. And now we get closer. Now I can hear the pop of the glove and I can see the spin of the ball a little bit better. And then I would go on deck. And this is external perspective is you watching yourself, right? And that's the key here. And getting as detailed and as vivid as you can. So going from, before I go to internal, Ronnie, I want to know what you got about external perspective.
Yeah, my big thing, because growing up, you had one ball game a week to watch a big league game. So that center field view was always one of the things that I used for myself. So I'd visualize myself being on TV, hitting, just staying on pitches, all those kinds of things. And then I'd bring it back to myself. And like I said earlier, I would visualize myself hitting, every pitch that the guy had, fastball, curveball, changeup. A big thing that helped me as I was in high school going into college, I struggled against left-handers. So that was a biggie for me. I would see myself, facing a left-hander from our conference who was tough, and I would visualize myself staying on him and, getting a good pitch to hit and hitting him and being successful with that. Now, one thing that I've learned over the years, I wish I'd have known it earlier, was being able to take a negative image, because sometimes we get a negative image in our head. And one thing that I've learned through reading books is what you can do with that negative image. You've got it in your mind. You can kind of make it small in your mind and just make it disappear. And, I've used that a lot with kids, and I think that helps them a ton. And I would even just get goofy with it and say, just make it blow up in a puff of smoke and it's gone. Now you can come back to your positive image. But like Ricky said earlier, it's just seeing yourself being consistently successful, in whatever angle works for you, and be creative with it. And I think it's very powerful.
It's solid, Ronnie. Thank you. So moving from the external perspective, we'll go into the internal perspective now. And this is me being extremely detailed. And when I can lock into this, I told a story, I think it was last time we were on, but going from a 180 hitter to a 280 hitter in 2 months. I hit about 400 for 2 months, and this right here is what I was visualizing. So internal perspective means you're seeing it like there's a camera on the bill of your helmet, right? So you're right there in the moment. So I would visualize this ring of fire out in front of home plate. And if that ball was coming into that ring of fire, that pitcher was in trouble. It just boosted my confidence. The ball would light up, my barrel would light up, and I would just connect because I was staying in my zone. But when I got really good, I would actually envision this internal perspective of this blue ring around my hot zone. And that blue ring represented the ice, right? If it came anywhere close to the ice, this bad pitch, I would have to shut it down. And that's why I go back to control, right? Controlling your neural pathways. I was training myself to stop if it's not close to my zone. And I think that's where you get in trouble. That's where you start falling into slumps, is when you start swinging at the pitcher's pitch instead of really staying in your zone. And I just got super detailed, and I would just see the ball come to the zone. I mean, I was unstoppable, and it felt great. And I would, it's easy to visualize that success, that feeling, as you ingrain those movement patterns into your body as well. But Ronnie, again, if you want to touch on internal perspective, be great, man.
You know, I think this is what you just showed there with the it's powerful for me with the blue, the ice, because that can help you in your mind create some control in the zone, some strike zone discipline. I think that's a great visual. Now, the other thing I've learned over the years, and I think it helps a ton, is let's say you had a bad game, the night before, and you swung at a slider in the dirt, or you popped up on a ball and it was a ball, and it was a failure. But why can't we take that same image? Because in our mind, it does, like Andy said, your mind doesn't know the difference. Take that same pitch that you swung at, that you chased at that ball, slider down away in the dirt. Now visualize it in your mind and see yourself taking it and not swinging at it. And then that ball inside that you swung at that was 3 inches off the plate that ended up jamming you, see yourself taking it. And then you get yourself in a better hitter's count possibly. And then you can visualize, okay, now I'm in the 3-1 count and I get something good to hit, and you visualize yourself making something happen. So, we're asking for, you to try to challenge yourself to try to be perfect in your mind for the 3 seconds or 5 seconds. And this is a great way to do it, to be able to visualize and take in a negative and turn it into a positive.
I mean, that's exactly what you want, Ronnie. You hit the nail on the head, man. Thank you. We'll just keep on cruising through this, going from there, and we talk about different sports. And I know there's a lot of athletes on here tonight. We have a couple softball players, and I think my neighbor's on as well, but we were talking yesterday about he's a professional fisherman, and how he visualizes his approach to catch a fish. And I mean, not just in athletics, but all walks of life. And now we're going to talk about Andy's favorite guy in the world, Conor McGregor. Andy, go ahead, man.
All right. Working in sports psychology, I've come to really appreciate a strong mind, and Conor McGregor is incredible for a couple reasons. But the one of the reasons I really want to focus on is his visualization techniques. Now, some of you may or may not know this, but he takes visualization to a whole new level. Okay. So every single day, he visualizes himself going against his opponent. So he actually closes his eyes and visualizes himself in the ring up against the person he's going to fight, because they usually know a few months in advance, right? And he visualizes himself in the locker room, getting his hands taped as he's walking out, what he'll see, what he'll hear, what he'll smell with the 15,000 people in the crowd, or however many people are there, what it will taste like, what it will sound like, what it will what the whole experience will be like. And so when he goes to fight, or when he's in the octagon, it's as if he had been there 1,000 times, because he had been there 1,000 times in his own head. And so he takes it to that level where there's no wonder that he was at one point like the world's best fighter, right? And it's arguably right, because we got a few guys right now, and he lost not that long ago, but he took that and he ran with it. And there were a bunch of famous interviews with him talking about this, where he envisioned exactly how he would knock out his opponents, and he did it exactly how he envisioned it. So I love a strong, I love a strong mind. And Conor McGregor, whether you like him or not, he's got a strong mind.
I mean, that just puts the hammer on the nail right there with how to visualize. There's a great example right there.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, Ronnie.
Andy, you said something about the more realistic, the more effective. I think that's huge for people to understand and hear. The more realistic you make it, just like you're talking about the hear, the smell, the taste, for a ball player, feeling the breeze in your face, like Adam said earlier, smelling the grass. I think that's it just makes it a vivid picture in your mind. So I love that. The more realistic that you make it, the more effective it's going to be.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so we covered the why and the how. Now, what should you visualize? This is my suggestion. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but just from what I know, and we're going to go through this pyramid again, starting from the bottom, going up. Like before practice, or when you're at home, when you have more time, you can visualize your long-term goals. If you want to go to LSU or Arizona State, or if you want to play in the major leagues, visualize that when you have time, and then eventually get to that internal process. But for sure, the long-term goal. Before a game, you don't have as much time. So let's focus more on short-term goals. Hit the ball hard 4 times in one game. And then on deck, something a little bit quicker. You can see the baseball. You can feel yourself being successful, and you can just see yourself doing it. You can see yourself celebrating. And then before every pitch, you could still visualize. And it just, for me personally, I go back to the internal. It's got to be simple. It's got to be just the baseball or the shape of the pitcher's hand or something, wherever you pick up the pitch. It's got to be something simple, because it's quick visualization, but you will get a lot out of it. So that's, Ronnie, did you have anything else to add before we're going to do a little exercise?
Yeah, I think the thing to understand as you start becoming more consistent with your visualization, understand that you're going to have distractions, and they are what they are. But as you deal with the distractions, you got to get back on track to really concentrate on your visualization. So as you get better and better at it, then the distractions become less and less. So just be aware of it, and then work to get yourself back on the task at hand.
Wow, that's fantastic. All right. So I know we went quick through that but we're going to have you guys do an exercise now. And this, Ronnie and Andy and I have actually taken, it's been about 3 to 4 months that we've been working on this mental thought process that we would have if we were in the batter's box. I'm sure there's different processes for pitching, which I would love to hear, for fielding, but we're going to take you through an at bat. So we're going to build these neural pathways tonight, okay? So this is going to be a process, so you're going to have to stay with me the whole time. And when you do this, I want you to close your eyes, okay? So 2 to 3 minutes, you're going to close your eyes, and we're going to build these neural pathways. All right, here we go. So close your eyes. I'm watching all of you. So, all right, so you're leading off the inning early in the game, and you're facing a right-handed pitcher. Standing outside your batter's box, do something to get yourself back to the present moment. So you can fix your batting gloves, or you can look at the label of your bat. Now, visualize your approach. What does the pitch look like out of the pitcher's hand? And how will you set the tone for the inning? Now, before stepping into your batter's box, when I say ready, you'll take one breath with your eyes closed. So you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. You're going to fill your stomach with air. And then you'll breathe and push the air out with your stomach for 4 seconds. Okay, ready? Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4. All right, with your eyes still closed, pay attention to your detailed image of success. How does it feel to connect with the ball and set the tone for the inning? All right, step into your batter's box, get into your stance. Make sure you keep your body loose and stay relaxed. Now, repeat a simple word or phrase that keeps you focused on the task at hand. So something like see the ball, see the spin, or attack the pitch, something to focus on the task. All right, pay attention to that focus word or phrase and be relaxed. Now, regardless of self-doubt, it's your responsibility to accept negative thoughts and to trust your focus. Now, look at the right-handed pitcher, envision where the pitcher's release point will be, and pay attention to your focus word. All right, here comes the windup and the pitch. It's in your ring of fire. So you swing and you connect with your pitch. Your hands feel weightless and it sounds like a cannon. The ball shoots off your barrel and you see the ball fly deep into the right center field gap. See yourself standing at second base doing a little celebration. All right, you guys can open your eyes. Y'all just hit a double. You just crushed it. So, all right. So it might have felt awkward for a couple of you, or you might have felt like your mind was wandering off somewhere. And that's possibly because your neural pathways are not quite developed the way they should be. And some of you probably already, they felt good. You felt comfortable doing it because you've already applied this in your life, in different aspects of life. Or if you're a player right now or a coach, you've used this visualization, but you can still make it stronger and you can develop a little bit more. Andy and Ronnie, you guys got anything?
No, I'm good right now.
Yeah,
I feel relaxed.
Yeah, I just had a double, so I'm feeling really good.
Yeah, you did. Drove in a couple RBIs too.
Yeah, but no, just that I was just going to add that visualization is, like I said before, it's a powerful tool, right? So this is now a tool that you have in your toolkit, and pull it out, use it, and as you do, you'll see a difference, especially if you put in a lot of time doing it. It really changes the way you play the game. So
yeah, I like what appreciate that, Andy. I like what Scott Emerson said. I don't like what Pat Misha said in this chat box, but what Emo said, yeah, why just visualize a double? He wants to hit a homer. But that's a pitching coach talking right there.
That's right.
But
that's awesome.
I don't know. I mean, we really want to hear, we want to have a discussion if you guys have time to stick around about what you guys thought about this visualization or how you guys apply it. You guys can make comments, ask questions. It's open for discussion.
Let me start off because I saw somebody with a question. Andy, this is probably for you. And it's something along the lines of, is it possible to do too much visualization? I think that's a great question.
That is a great question.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, but yes, you can do too much. In fact, research shows that over 20 minutes of visualization, and I believe that's per day, is where you're probably getting into too much. So you want it to be less than 20 minutes of visualization. So yeah.
Good point. I like that.
Hey guys.
Yeah, go Ricky. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to jump in, guys. So my point was really around, I think it was Adam sharing his visualization imagery going into play, going into bat, just before the pitch, and around the time where, and I know obviously, if a player has an inward order and is aware, and doesn't get caught up in the external and overthinking, it's an excellent thing. But what strikes me with that is players who don't quite have that inward awareness get caught up in the external, and then finding that balance between when's that point. Because I think another probably more powerful thing to do in terms of mindset is to fully surrender to the moment and fully trust intuitively that your processes are in place, that your preparation's there. Because when you fully trust and let go of thinking totally, then you're in that state of flow. Whereas visualization is more of a tool, perhaps, to create a certain image and way of thinking and feeling. But that, to me, isn't, if you go deeper into that flow fully, you're in that place where your Michael Jordan plays, or, where the best athletes are comfortable with the unknown. So as a sort of perspective, visualization is still in that field of the known, although it's very powerful and deep and an excellent tool. I just think it's always we've got to think of the balance between, are we fully surrendering to the moment and the power of the unknown and flow and so on. So that's kind of where I was coming from. And yeah.
Can I add to that? That brings up a really good point. The visualization is it's a tool, or it's a preparation tool, right? So it helps you prepare for the moment. And I like that you brought up flow, because if you are trying to visualize, it could potentially take you out of flow. So to stay in flow, which can be difficult, especially when you start recognizing when you're in flow, it sometimes will take you out, is think of this visualization as a preparation tool to help you get into flow or performing at your best. So that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
But is that why there's like a negative, or people are don't really buy into visualization sometimes, Ricky, you think? Because they're afraid that it's going to take them out? That is there a way to balance it? Is there a system?
Yeah, what's interesting, mate, is Gary Vee strikes me. If you guys know Gary Vee, the entrepreneur, he strikes me when you say that, because to me, he's a guy who naturally probably lives in quite a state of flow when you look at his energy. And he says himself, he's but scared to meditate, scared to visualize, because he might be taken out of the energy that he's in, or he's in such a good place. So he actually says that. I don't think he's ever tried any of this. I don't know. For me, most players I work with, it's mostly more around the unknown. It's not, it's not valued a lot in terms of the rugby environments, professional environments I work with. That's probably the biggest thing for me, as you guys mentioned. It's just not given enough weight. It's not really, understood well enough. The benefits aren't understood well enough. Players aren't introduced to it to a young age. To me, that's probably more of the factor. Whereas I think an athlete who accesses that flow state, I don't think there's many athletes that do that consistently. To be honest, I think visualization and imagery for them will be very natural, because they probably naturally have more of a positive, thinking and feeling inward state. So they really use that as a tool quite easily, I would think, if that makes sense. It's more, I know, with players, for example, who I've worked with, trying to visualize a certain player who I work one-on-one, but when I talk to them, we look and they have some really kind of deep emotional negative patterns that pretty much, until they address that, there's no way they're going to visualize effectively, right? Because that inner sense and deep feeling is not there. So, my approach with them is more of therapy around, let's unlock this and understand maybe, things that happened earlier in your career or in your life that are really affecting you and causing blockages in your ability to play. So does that kind of make sense? I know I can, with mindset, I sort of bring the big picture in, because it's all interconnected, as I'm sure you guys are aware.
Yeah. It makes me think about going back to Conor McGregor, how like he seems like he does it all the time. Like he can't get enough of it. But yeah, Todd, you wrote in the comment box that he works directly with Tony Robbins. And we all know Tony Robbins, the the motivational and inspirational individual. Now, what happens if you had eyes kind of looking out for you saying, hey, you don't need that much, kind of back off? Or, you know, when you work with somebody, like almost like the mentor, how important it is to have that other set of eyes on you. That's what I always use my hitting coaches for. There were another set of eyes of how my mechanics were working or how my approach was. And I feel like, I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe that's what Conor McGregor kind of does, uses a mentor as another set of eyes to kind of guide him through it.
I think
Adam, I think that's really important, Adam, with that, what you just said, because, you know, kids that I deal with, I like to ask questions. I want to know, I want them to talk about what they're going through, and they'll normally say it if they're getting too deep into it, you know, and that's, you know, again, the other set of eyes, and they may not be able to be aware of it just because they're in that state of where they're at. But us as mentors, as coaches, we can bring them back and say, okay, like you said, maybe that's too much for you. Maybe we need to back off and go in this direction. So, you know, just having somebody to hold you accountable, like we talked about.
I would also touch on, Adam, that Conor McGregor is an excellent case study and example, because, you know, if we go a little bit deeper into image and visualization, you know, it's defining who you are as a person. It's defining your beliefs of who you are, your values, you know, and then on top of that is the specific detail around gameplay and execution. So if we take Conor McGregor, for example, he believed 10 years before becoming a double champ that he was the best. He was already a double champ. So he says this all in documentaries. So he embodied a vision and lived it and breathed it, you know, when he was on that benefit and he was a nobody and lived with his mother. You know, but that's the power of bringing a vision into the moment and into that stillness and meditating. You know, when you take it a little bit deeper, if you think and feel you're the best and you're a world champ and you're the greatest, like many athletes do, many of the great athletes use visualization in a sense of embodying a vision of who they are as a person, and everything else, to me, comes the cream on the top. The cream on the top, you know, like visualizing your specific performance is internally as part of your internal dialogue. It's just a part of it, you know. It's just like a part of the wave or whatever. But the real momentum comes from embodying, living, and breathing that vision, because then you can start to manifest your reality, right? And if we look at manifestation, that's really what imagery is essentially. And you know, you start to attract opportunities. You start to attract positive. You've got a natural abundance of energy because there's no friction in your thinking. You know, and Conor McGregor, he says himself, he doesn't have one limiting belief that comes up, and if it does, he'd let it pass by for 10 years. So he built incredible momentum, you know, and manifested. And he says himself, he pictured and manifested, you know, that moment when he held the two belts up. So, you know, there's always that perspective too to think about.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that too. The reason visualization too is so powerful is because it changes behavior, right? So if Conor McGregor never had that visualization of him becoming a world champ, it would have changed his behavior to probably not becoming the world champ. So it's all about how you act and how visualization affects how you act. And so that's what this is about. It's about behavior, and visualization changes behavior.
So does it matter when? It sounds like, Ricky, you said like Conor McGregor, he had this when he was younger, the adversity that he went through when he was younger, and he kind of transformed it or used that. Is there a point where it's too late to start visualizing?
For me, mate, not at all. I don't. For me, man, I tell everyone I work with, you know, you can be the best player in the world because, you know, if you're already a professional athlete, as the graph showed, you can add 30% on top, right? If you're all on a mindset and live completely in the moment like the best athletes do. So, yeah, I would say that, you know, anybody can maximize and live completely in a state of flow and play that way in the game and have complete inward order. And it's all about, you know, going really deep and being consistent with a full mindset plan.
I guess I didn't mean like start too late. I mean, like, could you, would you be stronger? Like if you started earlier, like because you started earlier, it's going to be tough for someone to catch up to Conor McGregor because he started so young. Like it's when you start building these pathways.
Oh, 100%, man. Like if you think of Tiger Woods, his dad had him doing this stuff when he was 2, putting and pretending there was a crowd, and the brain develops and grows. I think it's like 90% or something by the age of 3 or 4, So absolutely, any the earlier the better for sure, 100%. And I'm sure in the future, maybe the longer term, professional sports will probably, start to realize that and and even schools and create environments that are conducive to that.
Rosie, I got a question.
Yeah, Emo.
Probably for Andy, somebody smarter than me, but
no.
Visualization. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get. I was terrible at it, even though I hit that homer to right center off of Rosie's exercise. But what about visualization? You're training your soldiers and maybe to go into combat, and you have the map all set up, how the SEALs are gonna go in here, and they're visualizing going into these places, going underwater, going into the tunnel. How does that compare now to the virtual reality glasses, where by wearing the virtual reality glasses, you have to make decisions. For me, when you're visualizing, I can tell myself what to do. I'm gonna see good pitches because I'm telling myself hit good pitches. So how can I visualize a bad pitch? But with these virtual reality glasses, give us a little comparison to what that is compared to doing the visualization on your own compared to having some sort of intelligence doing it for you.
So I would say that having an intelligence that does it for you is a form of visualization. And I would probably say that it's a better form, but it is visualization because that's sure, you're not creating it with your own mind, but it's creating it for you. And so it puts you in that moment without actually being in the moment. And that's what visualization is all about, right? So those glasses and those systems are extremely effective in helping people prepare for the unknown, right? Because a lot of those guys, like soldiers, they're doing things that have never been done, right? In some situations, or they're going to a situation that they have very little idea what they're getting themselves into, and they know that. And so those type of glasses is a form and extremely effective for training purposes, for sure.
Well, I know that there are several Major League Baseball teams that have the VR glasses. They have the data of pitchers pitching, and two of those teams, or one for sure I know of, won the World Series this year that had the technology. And some teams, our team, we don't have it. We don't pay for it. We don't have the money to pay for this. And it just always seems like you're like, man, they hit everything, or they're on everything, or they've seen this before. And like you said, it's a game changer in my opinion. And when you get to put these glasses on and track pitches for hours and just watch the ball coming at you, you kind of form that window of with your eyes, where these pitches are going to be strikes and where these pitches are going to be balls. And it puts some teams at a big disadvantage because a lot of teams don't have it.
Yeah. And that kind of comes back to the neural pathways, right? When you are practicing with those VR glasses, you're building the neural pathways to start recognizing what that pitch is going to do or what it's going to look like. And so really it takes way less effort having a pair of glasses than actually hitting. And you could probably go through significantly more reps, right? So you can watch the ball come at you way more times with the glasses on versus in real time, right?
Well, your eyes are getting game-like information rather than the 60-mile-an-hour heater Rosie's throwing during batting practice.
Yeah,
You're
exactly,
actually,
right?
You're actually, got the glasses on and looking at 100 miles an hour. And I would think for young kids that are on here, and Ronnie could probably answer this as a hitting coach, you're 14 years old and you're training your eyes to hit 100 wearing these glasses. The older you get and the more times you get in a box against these guys throwing 100, you're not as nervous about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, Ronnie, you go on.
No, it's okay. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, that's exactly it. Right. And the reason, like the science behind what's happening is you're opening those neural pathways so that the information of watching 100-mile-an-hour fastball coming at you is opens because you've done it so many times, and the glasses that's actually incredible. And yeah, the Army uses a lot of that type of things. We could go down a rabbit hole for a long conversation about technology and how valuable it is in really developing athletes and soldiers. But that's fascinating. I'm glad you brought that up. All right, I don't know.
Rosie.
Everybody else got comments or questions? We're good.
I have a question that might be like the complete inverse of what Scott just said. Could you, so let's say you didn't want to spend a lot of money on doing this, but you wanted to be creative. Could you put someone in a room that like deprives them of like their senses, like a dark room? That way there's no distractions. Would that enhance this?
Well, I got something on that, Andy.
Yeah.
And you probably know about this. There was a POW who apparently was in his cell for years, and he'd use visualization of playing golf, his country club back at home, and he never broke 90. And the first round he after he got rescued, went home and shot like a 76. And that was, he hadn't played since he was hostage. You could probably Google the story and look it up, but that's what he did every day. Was he played golf in his mind while he was in his cell, and he came out and he was a better golfer.
Right. And I would say, like, okay, so if you take out all the distractions in a situation and then train them, sometimes that might not be helpful because, and actually hold on, let me work that out real quick. Because in this situation that you just explained about how you have a golfer who hadn't played in a long time, who was in a dark room, he was able to learn how to concentrate, I would argue. So if you take out distractions and you're still able to concentrate, whether there's distractions or not there, then yeah, you're going to have the benefit. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but I guess I haven't seen any research, and I'm not really sure on whether taking out distractions is usually helpful or harmful as far as like training purposes. But
yeah, I mean, I guess I was just thinking, so I live in New York, so we have all sorts of weird things available to us. So there's have you ever heard of like sensory deprivation tanks? So I was thinking, like, is that something where you could really take advantage of something like this?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it'd be fun to try, right? So
yeah, no, I'd love to try. I'm just curious if there's any backing of the idea.
Yeah, I personally, I don't know any research on it, but
okay.
Yeah, I can find out though. I'll do some research on it. Let me write that down.
There's a company called Oculo. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that before, but they practice. They do a lot of soccer practice. I see. You see it on LinkedIn, whatever. But they also do. They're starting with baseball though. They practice in like low light, like hardly any light. It's kind of dark, and there's like a little circle where the ball comes out of. So like that deprivation of light, they say that they've tested it and it's improved. So I would think like visualization, if you kind of take the senses out of it or the distractions out of it, it would be just as beneficial. But for me,
yeah, that makes sense.
My question is, how do we get players to buy into it? Like, how do you, if they haven't done it too much? I wonder if anybody's got thought on that. How do you set up a program for them or encourage them to do it? That's what I thought.
I would say, mate, on that, I would say that a good lead-in would be meditation, because meditation and mindfulness has more of a in society in general is a little bit more understanding. It's becoming a bit more common. People have, download apps, have a bit more access. And that's always my starting point for visualization, is through just bringing your attention to breathing and senses in a body, meditate for 5 to 10 minutes, get very still. And then the noise isn't so much there. So naturally you can start to allow that visualization to flow and your intentions, and build that picture from a place of stillness. And the advantage of that is, and this is a huge thing that is overlooked in visualization, is kind of misunderstood, is that a lot of us, we tend to visualize from the past to the future. So our past ideas, behaviors, habits, and beliefs, which generally are limited in some way, shape, or form for most people. Whereas if you bring that into a place of stillness, when your mind subsides and you're just in touch with your sort of awareness and inner body, then you can start to manifest and create a vision from that more limitless place of the moment, or limitless possibilities. So for me, that's really a huge shift in how visualization can work, because then you can, like Conor McGregor did, you can create your reality, right? You can start to create new ways of thinking and feeling. And if they're the deepest and most primary within your consciousness, then you're going to manifest that reality. You're not going to be pulled into the past behaviors and limiting beliefs, which for me, honestly, most athletes who go to visualize and don't do it, it's because they haven't addressed their limiting beliefs and, past behaviors and attitudes and that momentum. So that self-awareness is a huge unlock towards that. And then also meditating and creating more awareness as an athlete. So I call them the building blocks of mindset, self-inquiry and awareness. And without that, anything really else for me on the surface, any other tool, you can't really fully, step into, and it's not fully transformative, as you're probably likely to be pulled into those limiting and past behaviors and beliefs. So there's a couple of windows for me that I use with my clients: meditation and self-inquiry for sure. Because as soon as you understand yourself more, you can let go of that and look at creating new ways of, visualizing. And when you learn to meditate and contact your awareness, you can shift your energy to being. And from that place, it's very natural to visualize. So I think visualization without those two things is always going to be limited, really, and not fully transformative. So that's just my take on it.
I mean, I've been a part of a few teams where it's mandatory to go do like a session of meditation or mental preparation. So the whole team's in there, whatever, there's 40 guys in there. And by the third session, there's 5.
Yeah.
Like the retention of holding them, like making, like, I mean, that's pretty significant that they won't come back for more because they weren't successful.
Do you know why that is, though? Most people do not meditate properly. 95% in society, there's a huge misconception. We look at it as, we step into it like, I want to achieve this. I want to be still. I need to sit there like some sort of Buddha. And that's just creating another idea that attaches to your egoic consciousness, which is limitation. So you're never, ever going to achieve that. And you miss the whole point that meditation is about, learning. It's more about the inquiry. When you start it, it's more about the inquiry into what's wrong. Where's my fears and anxieties and your limiting beliefs, and understanding yourself. Because the misconception to create another idea to project to is always that almost causes more friction and more reaction to kind of your limiting egoic thoughts and beliefs. So, and that's what it is with meditation. It's done completely wrong in society. We don't understand that it's much more about understanding your limitations and the false, because when you do that, you naturally open up a space of awareness and a space of, that allows you to go into that stillness. Whereas usually we just create more friction by creating a misconception about, as human beings, we always want something, right? I'm only going to do this to get that, or I'm only going to meditate because I want to become more calm. And as soon as you step into that desire, you're already there as a thinker, and you never actually meditate. And that's a huge thing, man, that 95% don't meditate properly. And that's why it's that's why that would happen. And the other thing is, most athletes and most people have a fixed mindset. They have fixed mindset tendencies. Trying to overcome that with some people is like trying to walk into a tsunami. You know, a lot of people, you're not going to win. There's too much momentum and inertia there. So it's those sort of players that maybe, you know, if they're affecting the team culture, you let go and you build your culture around that growth mindset, you know, around people that put the team first and buy into that vision and so on. So obviously there's a lot of dynamics when you get into it. But my point is that meditation is completely misunderstood in Western society, like ridiculously.
I like what Tommy says here.
Rosie.
Yeah, go ahead.
Being in the coaching world in the professional coaching world for 20 years, the mistake is too many numbers. You know, instead of having 40 people in one group, you should have had 5 people in 8 groups.
Right. That's a great point.
Because when you start to understand coaching and players, there's probably 50 people on this webinar or so tonight or whatever. And there's going to be more questions when we turn this off than there are going on now, because that's just the way it is. Every camp I go to, you got any questions? You got a major league pitching coach sitting here, you got any questions? And all of a sudden there's like one question. And I say, hey, here's my email if you got any questions. And then by the time I get to the car, I got 50 questions because people don't want to do it in large groups. When I coached in AAA and you were on the team, I used to read a chapter of the mental ABCs of pitching before every series. Well, a couple guys came to me and said, hey, can we, maybe break it down instead of having the whole staff in there at one time? You know, some guys are embarrassed. And I read the chapters. When I was in A-ball, I tried to get the players to read a chapter, but they just don't want to do those things. They sometimes feel embarrassed. So it's the way, like he was talking about in numbers and inertia. That's, in my opinion, more players want to be coached one-on-one than in big groups. Sometimes we don't have the time, but as much as you can be with somebody one-on-one, I'm with that pitcher as much as I can one-on-one, dealing with, we teach, visualization. We want our guys to visualize. Some guys can't do it, but if they feel more pressured to do it and they start giggling, when there's a lot of people there, but when it's just you and him sitting one-on-one going out to lunch and you're talking, they'll be more receptive to doing it. That's just human nature. And what happens, and that's coaching, is getting these guys into smaller groups so they can earn your trust and they can understand you better.
And going back to what Tommy was talking about, like even just starting small, it's inching your way into it, introducing it gradually, because like Tommy said, it's like your mind's like a computer. Like you need to understand how to program it so you can't just rush right into it, and you can't do it with a lot of people. So Emo, that's very solid, man.
Rosie,
go ahead, Andy.
If I could jump in on that, Rosie, there's an awesome, one of my favorite, you and I have talked about this before, but one of the things that got me on board with visualization and really understanding how to teach it was John Lester's experience, where he reflected, okay, this didn't work for me, but so next time let's try this. Let's try to change it a little bit, because he understood, he intuitively got what it could do for him, but the onboard wasn't smooth, right? And so it was that smaller kind of baby steps into it, and reflecting with the coach saying, you know what, next time let's do this, 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 and this. And Bob Tewksbury adjusting that as they move forward. And that really formed how I approach it with my athletes, and not a one size fits all, here, okay, 40 kids, here you go. I've got different scripts for different kids that are different lengths. And we talk afterwards about their journey and about, you talked about the negative thoughts, about accepting the negative thoughts, about not judging. There are different things to focus on with different people, and that path changes depending on who it is.
And that, I mean, for me, that as a coach now, that takes a lot of time, right? The sustainability of that.
Right. That's coaching. That's coaching.
I mean, for 40 guys, I mean, to really, I mean, you got to really dial it in and make sure they got to communicate back with you too. A lot of them don't even say anything.
Yeah.
So guys, just to jump in there, my process as a mental skills coach, I'm just working at the moment on a plan with a professional rugby team in Australia who I'm working with in 2021. And the process as I see it is I do have the time. It's my full-time role. I work one-on-one with each player for a personalized plan, whether that's visualization, meditation. At the end of the day, I feel, each player will naturally have certain things that they are more in tune with and will pull them towards that. So for me, as soon as you work with each player, you, as was discussed by a couple of people, you have that chance to create that inward shift. You can go very deep. Like players tell me things I've never told people in terms of, family life and their upbringing. So that allows that inward shift. And when you get that from as many players as you can have that small group. And then ultimately, when you shift the culture in the team to more of an open growth mindset, vulnerable culture and buying into a vision, you get to the point where the whole team can access the power of meditation and visualization. But it's only as a summation of the entire team. So you hit a certain threshold, 40 to 50%. And if there's half the teams there, naturally the energy is going to shift that way. And then that's where you create those cultures that are sort of unbeatable, and that's my approach to it.
That's very powerful. There's a question from Andre Demetrol about how do I work on developing that ring of fire. So shifting gears here. It kind of goes back to what Ricky was saying. I had a limitation. My limitation was I was swinging at the right-hander's sinker inside. Right, I was hitting a $180 because I kept on swinging at the same pitch, and I knew how to work on that weakness. I had to find a way, like I said, like that ice, that if it came in that sinker zone, I had to take it. I'm like, hey, if I'm taking it, I got to find a way to still be able to drive the ball and drive in runs. And I thought back to what my dad taught me when I was a kid about, you'd always say, see a glass window out in front of home plate. And I thought about that, but I wanted to make it a little bit more animated, right? I want to make it a little bit more exciting. But it just kind of gradually, like kind of like Tommy was saying, like it's like a computer. You kind of like start creating, because first it was just like kind of like, all right, stop swinging at this. Stop swinging at this. But then like, oh my goodness, start swinging at this. And that's how I just gradually, and then it just keeps becoming more vivid the more you develop those neural pathways. But it stemmed from my limitation. What my weakness was, the way I see it. I mean, I'm sure Andy could probably concur with that, but.
Oh yeah, 100%, right? So, that visual is incredible, the Ring of Fire. I think it's just so valuable, right? Because it gives you that understanding of what you need to do in the moment. And when it doesn't come in that Ring of Fire, you know exactly what you're going to do. And when it does, you know exactly what you're going to do. So it gives you a lot of direction in how you're going to actually perform. It's powerful stuff.
So Ricky, you go back to the idea of flow. Like, is that flow? Like, well, I mean, I felt like I was in flow. I mean, I was like lights out. But
I would say so, man. I would say, a metaphor is an excellent way to quieten the mind a bit as well, because it's not so much analytical thinking, it's more of the action based. I would say flow. Yeah, flow to me is when you're just in that place of awareness. It's effortless, it's ease. The mind's quite quiet, and you obviously can use thinking, but it comes out of a place of intuition and instinct, right? And I loved your that Ring of Fire as well. I thought that was excellent. It was outstanding because it kind of puts you into that flow almost, because it almost like it gives you the sense that you're living in a certain metaphorical world almost, man.
Yeah.
It's quite cool.
And that's kind of like the world like my dad put me into. Like he always used metaphors when I was playing baseball. It was pretty neat.
Some of the best rugby coaches at the moment, they create metaphors around the team vision. Like one of the guys who won the competition in New Zealand, their theme for the year was around Muhammad Ali taking out something to do with Muhammad Ali, and the third time they're bouncing back, was like a whole story around it, and it gels the team. Just it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. No, there's no question. Todd, I don't know if you wanted to expand on, because I know we touched on like the distractions side of things, but I really like your comment here. It seemed like you've done a lot of research, as I know, as we've talked.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So the documentary, if anybody saw the Michael Jordan documentary that was on over the summer, talked a lot about a person by the name of George Mumford. And George was the architect of teaching mindfulness to work with the Bulls, with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen and that whole crew. Phil Jackson brought him in, and George is in the Boston area. He actually played basketball, not professionally, but his roommate in college was Dr. J. And one of the things that he worked with the players was to, train them. And I did this when I was playing golf when I was growing up, is to put as many distractions and potential obstacles in your path while you're practicing. So you get comfortable with those uncomfortable things. And so that nothing, like I would put the ball behind trees in my backyard and just in practice where I would have half a swing, a quarter swing, have to swing in reverse, backhanded. And so what George Mumford did with Michael Jordan and the rest of the Bulls was sometimes they would dim the lights. I heard you mention that, right? They would turn the noise of the speakers up really high. Okay. They would do run them in practice in different ways to really mix up what they were expecting. And Pete Carroll does this too. Pete is a big proponent of mindfulness. He works with Michael Gervais, and Michael is a sports psychologist also. So they would do the same kind of thing, work in smaller groups, bring in very loud noises, people yelling different things at the players, playing with, maybe their shoe is untied on one foot. So, to be careful with that, but to do, all kinds of things that might be an obstacle where the turf, gives way on different things, poor conditions, and training that allows your brain to just pick up more information, right? So it has more experience. So it doesn't get bogged down with those. I think, early on you were talking about the experience piece, right? And what Andy was talking about, the practice, the more practicing. So just the different kinds of things. But I did the same thing in baseball. I would have while I was practicing, I would have pitchers on my team just throw me stuff all over the place, mix it up, in. I got beamed in the nose in 6th grade and broke my nose. So when you imagine you then have, mental and emotional blocks to get back in the box, people get hit in the head, various things. So I would have people pitch me inside on purpose so that I could get the emotion of fear out, and so we did things like that. I think putting athletes in uncomfortable positions, within a limit, right? Because you can go overboard. So, but I think that was really helpful. The other thing I really like about this discussion in terms of the mindfulness, the meditation piece, the other piece too, you mentioned thoughts are electrical. Emotions are magnetic, right? They're from the heart, that area. So if you combine the thoughts, which are electrical, with the emotions, your visualization is much more powerful. So if you literally feel, you feel the emotions of being successful at hitting. You feel the emotion after you have had an injury and you're getting back in the box the first time. You feel what that rush of excitement is. You could set it up where you're imagining yourself calm in that setting. You're feeling the emotion of stillness and calm. That drives that whole visualization even more more powerfully. So that's the only other piece I would add. I think that the process is brilliant. Get to stillness. I mean, Mike Trout, they always talk about Mike Trout. He doesn't want a single thought in the box, right? And if he was visualizing in the box, he doesn't want to even do that. So he does his visualization way before. And anytime he gets a thought, he steps out. Because the whole point of visualization is to build those neural pathways so that you can then go on automatic and not think, right? It's almost like an anchor, that visualization, those images. And then you're allowing, once you're just let it go and let it go, you actually are able to then let it flow and get in the flow. So that's kind of what I would add, but I love the discussion. I think it's fantastic. And I would agree, so many people are taught meditation with maybe the wrong intention. There's a lot of people doing good work, but there's a lot of people, I think, that get into too much results oriented, and so, just you want to teach calmness and self-awareness. And that's the big thing I think Ricky was talking about, being self-aware of those, limiting beliefs and things, because those get in the way too. I mean, we're visualizing all the time anyway, and this is just conscious visualization, right? So this is, setting the table in advance. And I use it for everything. I mean, it's extremely powerful. Musicians and, so you map that out, what that looks like. But then I always add the feeling piece, because I think that's so important. And that's what you remember in your bones long term. You might forget the image, but you remember the feeling, like a vacation you had. You might not remember all the things, but you remember the feeling, how fun it was, how exciting it was. And that's the same thing I find with visualization. So thank you for letting me share.
No, that's fantastic. We really appreciate you sharing that insight. That's really good, powerful stuff. And going back to the distraction, I really like this idea because, listen, I'm not sure if you guys know Jocko, the podcast, former Navy SEAL, but he talks a lot about this. He says prepare with the most negative, not mindset, but what can go wrong, right? Going to war. Think about what's the worst case scenario and prepare for that. And I go back, it made me think about when I was a kid. I would bounce balls off the wall. I would put like little obstacles in the way to create bad hops for myself when I was like 10, 12 years old. But and we've talked a lot about golf tonight, and I wanted to bring Greg. I'm not sure if you want to share, if you have thoughts about this, but Greg, he's the head coach at Oklahoma State for the girls golf team. I just wanted to get your insight. Just want to hear what you had to say.
No, I think everything that's been said is incredible. I mean, and obviously golf is, is from a psychological standpoint, all of this is very useful for what we do. But everything that from a golfer to a coach, and then everything that I've learned through sports psychologist has been talked about today. And so I've learned a lot. I've also, it's confirmed a lot, of the things that we do and talk about with our team. And I will say that, one thing that we do and kind of go back 2 weeks from, when we were talking about goals, is we tie in our goals with some of this stuff. And as I sent you that goals form that we use, and one of the parts that we have in there is we want them to write out, I can visualize, and have them write out what they can visualize. And then also, as Todd just alluded to, we have in there that I can feel, or what does it feel like, with all of that. And then I believe, what it is that you believe with what you're doing. So all of this is great stuff. And so I do think that when it comes to visualization, I think there's a component to it with with mechanics and technique, and then there's that component of the psychological component of putting yourself in that position in that moment. And I think about that probably the two moments that in baseball that I come to my mind, big moments are, Joe Carter and David Freese in the World Series. But I'm sure that they put themselves in that position hundreds of times before they actually got there to pull that off. And so, so I haven't been there and done that as a coach and a player. I mean, I can confirm that all of this stuff is legit and is super important to, where athletes go and how they compete.
Greg, thank you so much. That is everybody that participated. I know there's forget who said it, but there's a ton of thoughts out there. And I just know it's getting a little bit later. Andy, I'm not sure, or Ronnie, if you guys want to wrap it up, but if you have your final thoughts, and we can sign off.
Yeah, no, I think we're good. Everything was good. Really good insight from a lot of people and a lot more elaborate discussions than I anticipated. That's awesome. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun just to listen to everybody and just to have their input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll kind of add too that I like the after conversation is sometimes the funnest part of a webinar, because we get to hear from everybody's great minds that have really been there, done that. And I just really appreciate being part of this conversation. So, and I always tell Adam this is that I try to take my ego out so I can just absorb. And I think ego can sometimes be our worst enemy at times, but thank you for everyone's thoughts. It's an incredible conversation.
Yeah. Whenever we prepare this, we put a lot of thought into it and we study a lot, but man, we get a ton out of it. We probably learn more than you. We definitely want to teach and share our experiences, but you guys are brilliant and it's awesome. And we appreciate the support. You guys always showing up. But with that said, you guys have a good evening and thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.